Morning. How are we doing today? I hope everybody had a good week and you're getting some much needed downtime this weekend. Today is April 5th, and that means that we're, just over 3 weeks away from finding out who will be the next party to lead our country. It's been a very good election season, lots of engagement from all the parties as well as the independent members who are looking to sort of champion their own cause. I thought it's been a good election season. Maybe certain parts have been a bit spicy, but I think for the most part, people are trying their best to focus on the country, focus on what we need to do as a country, not just to get through the next 4 years, but more of a long term plan. And I think that's very important because regardless of which party takes office come the 1st of May, they are going to have a tall order ahead of them. And the world is changing. So while folks are trying to wade through and figure out, well, which party should I support? Should it be the National Party? Should it be TCCP? Should it be PPM? Should it be some other grouping of people? It's very important to stay in touch with the world news and understand how does that affect this country and how does it affect some of the promises and commitments that are being made. A very topical issue is cost of living, and I think all parties, all independent members have made a commitment to try to bring down cost of living, but some of those things are outside of our control. We're not a producing country. We're not a manufacturing country. Yeah, we have somewhat of a farming industry, but it's not sufficient to really cushion us from the price shocks and the macro factors globally. So you would have noticed, of course, that there's now a tariff war kind of going on right now in the US and other parts of the world, right? So instantly overnight, things are more expensive, and it's not just in certain things, right? It's in things like steel goes into building your house. It's also in things like cars. I'm hearing that they could go up like 25%. Obviously, things like food. So when we're talking about, well, how can we bring down cost of living? To be honest, I don't think anyone quite has the answer, because fundamentally, how we're structured as a country, as a jurisdiction, we are essentially a price taker. We don't have a large economy, we're not able to dictate price on an international level. Chances are we get stuff through the US that then came from another country. So all we can really do, honestly, is to accept the price shocks as they happen. There's not much we can do other than that, right? So it is something I am curious about to understand. How will our prospective MPs, how will they be able to effectively bring down cost of living when things just got more expensive on a global level? And this is not me poking at anyone. This is just as a Caymanian, as someone who's very well in tune and locked in to international affairs. It's genuinely a question that I want all parties to consider realistically. How are you going to bring down cost of living when it just got more expensive? What levers do you have available to be able to do that? What are we going to do? Cut import duty to make things more affordable? Because then that's trickle down economics, right? We have to hope that by the government cutting import duties, that will then trickle down to the everyday consumer like me and you. I don't know if that's possible. I don't think we have legislation in place that allows us to have a proper framework to be able to regulate these things. So that's going to be very difficult. And even if we do decide to cut import duty to make things more affordable in the supermarkets, more affordable at the pump when you go and get gas, more affordable when you go to the store and there's things you need to buy. Okay, but that import duty funds very essential government services. It funds things like social development, it funds things like education, it funds things like infrastructure development. So I want you to go on a journey with me and I want you to scenario this out. Things are now 10 to 20% more expensive. We cut import duty to give some relief. Let's assume that there are no further retaliatory tariffs, right? Because that's always a thing. In a tariff war, no one wins. And us being a small nation, we lose every single time. So scenario this with me, right? We decide to cut import duty. That then means that there is now a bit of a deficit in terms of what we have available to fund essential projects and essential services. Okay, so how do we then make up the deficit? Are we increasing fees for other things? How do we do that? Or are we getting into more debt? It's a question that we need to consider. So when you think about it from that perspective, I think it was at some point this week I read that the government now for 2025, I believe it's 2025, is now, I think, flipping from a surplus to a deficit. And that's for things like, I think it was like increases in salaries and various other things that then led to that. And, I'm not saying that those things weren't valuable and those things were not needed. And for all of the different projects that benefited from that funding, obviously I'm happy for that. But when you look at it, right, we now have a budget deficit. Yeah. We are now even more exposed more than ever in terms of eroding our financial position as a country. Because right now, our revenue from external sources, coercive revenue, and things of that nature is the highest it's ever been, right? Because things are going well, tourism has bounced back, the financial services industry is booming. We're seeing leaps and bounds in new sectors. So fintech is starting to take off. Captive insurance is also starting to thrive. Of course, even from the perspective of captive insurance, we have our counterparts in Bermuda going, well, hey, Cayman is now a threat, and they're now lobbying to see how can we become less of a threat. So I say all that to say that our expenditure has never been this high in the history of our government. Never. And the only way that we can sustain this level of expenditure is if our revenue continues to grow year on year, and if our revenue continues to outpace inflation. Either that, or we're discovering revenue from new sources. Because believe me, folks, the day that those revenue streams start to slow, or they start to go into a decline, we are in trouble as a country. If we have a $1.1 billion expenditure budget and our revenue is, say, 1.1, say perfectly matches, no deficit, no surplus, that is still a risk. Because what if we have a slowdown in tourism? What if there's a change in legislation in the US that now makes the attractiveness of doing business in Cayman not where it should be? What if, because we need to raise revenue from additional sources, we now have to increase fees? So for example, LCCL fees have gone up, various other fees have gone up, and I know there'll have to be further consideration of what else can increase. But it's demand and supply. It's economics, folks. There's people who will stay here and do business here, but they are looking at our jurisdiction, they're looking at BVI, they're looking at Bermuda, they're looking at Singapore, they are looking at Hong Kong. And in some cases, because legislation in the US may become more relaxed, they're also looking, well, is it still advantageous to do business in Cayman, or do I now need to think about potentially moving back onshore? So any of those things start to shift, start to change, we now go from being perfectly balanced as a budget, 1.1 billion in revenue, 1.1 billion in expenditure, to all of a sudden we now have a deficit. And ask yourself, what is more sure? Revenue continuing to go up or cost continuing to go up? So from that perspective, if we were completely balanced, we're at risk. I don't think we are, and I don't think with all of the promises that different folks have made, I don't think that we will be. That's just my assumption, right? So what do we then do? We theoretically have to look at borrowing additional funding, yeah? That's great if the benefits you reap from that borrowed money exceeds the cost of borrowing funds. Well, if it doesn't, it does mean that now and generations to come, we need to figure out how to service that debt. And how are we going to do that? And it's a very real question. It's not in any way throwing shade at anyone. It's not me saying I have the answers. It's me saying, guys, this is serious. This is something that we need to get on top of, and everyone has a part to play in how this country moves forward. Whether your party wins or loses, we need to work together, because we are in a very precarious position right now, and it is only going to get worse. I hear folks saying, yes, we need more jobs for Caymanians in our country. And believe me, I support that. I'm in agreement with that. But folks, you need to understand that the world is changing. When you look at the number of banks that we had here a few years ago, we have less now. There has been consolidation, there has been de-risking from the jurisdiction, different things have happened. Same thing with other financial services providers. You've seen consolidation in the industry. You've seen jobs being outsourced from Cayman to other jurisdictions, because from a cost perspective, it's very expensive to do business here. So we talk about more Caymanian jobs, but where are they coming from? Are we going to create new sectors, new industries? Are our people ready to take up those opportunities? Probably not. You know, I heard about fintech and Bitcoin and crypto years ago, but for me, I was like, well, I don't understand it, so it's not something I'm really going to look into and study. But the fintech industry has taken off over the years. Are our young people ready for that? Probably not. And it will take time. So a department like WORC, they are meant to be doing this top level view of the market, what's coming, what's changing, and they're supposed to feed that information back in so that when decisions are made around scholarships and things of that nature, and we're preparing our young people for the future, we can at least guide them in the right direction. And that takes time. It takes 4 years to do a bachelor's degree minimum, and that's not enough. A degree does not prepare you for this working world. A degree is just to check the box, is the first thing you need to do. You need a degree. You need the soft skills, because if you have a degree but you can't in a workplace manage conflict, talk to clients, conduct yourself in a certain way, you don't got a job. But that's not enough. You need certifications as well to be competitive. So these things take time. So in terms of a human capital development plan, that's something we need to look at from now, because we are, I think, 10 years behind where we should be at this point. But that's the reality of it. What are the new sectors and industries we can get into? And how do we prepare our people to be retooled and skilled for them? It's going to take time, and we're behind the line already. Again, back to outsourcing. It's happening, it's a reality. There are other jurisdictions that are much more affordable from a human capital perspective. Jurisdictions like Mauritius, you can get qualified, accountants, corporate staff for a fraction of what is being paid here. Financial services jurisdictions like, for example, Dublin, same thing. Fund accounting here was a very, very big, very popular, a booming sector, and it still is. But in terms of jobs being done here, that is shifting. I remember the days of doing, cash reconciliations and booking portfolio transactions. With AI and technology, these things are now being done automated. So there's no longer a need for as many people in certain sectors. And then separately from that, if you are a business owner, right? You own a fund administrator, are you going to pay someone $100,000 to do the job in Cayman? Or are you going to pay $50,000 for someone to do that job in Dublin? So the fact is, folks, I don't know how we are going to create those jobs. I don't know. The existing jobs that are available, yes, we could change immigration policy to make circumstances more supportive of getting Caymanians into these jobs. But there's also necessary preparation to make sure that people are ready to take on some of these jobs. So that's something I need people to consider. And it starts from within the schools. I think the way we're teaching in the schools is likely how we've taught for all the years gone by. How are we preparing our young people to be ready for the future? Because if we fail them in school, no wonder crime rate is up. You think people really want to rob a liquor store for $50? You don't think people actually want to be gainfully employed in their own country? I can assure you, yes, there's people who will always be drawn to a life of crime, but for a lot of people, they're just trying to survive. And if they're not able to survive, then now there's a knock-on effect in terms of crime. Knock-on effect from crime is that people feel less safe. We get called up in the news. Tourists start to feel less safe about coming here. And it has an overall impact on the social fabric. If people are unemployed or underemployed, there is then a strain on financial assistance for the government. And as a former CFO that had oversight for that, every year that budget increases. I remember when the stipend for permanent financial assistance, seamen and veterans, it used to be $650. It used to be $750. It's now $1,500, and that's probably not enough. It's the same thing that the pensioners are getting. It's not enough. And then in the years gone by, people could afford property. People could then acquire property for investment purposes. And then when they retire, they could then now continue to rent out that property to support their financial needs. But a lot of people are retiring now. They don't even own their own house. You don't own your own house. How are you going to find the money for an investment property? It's not possible. So here's what I'm saying. We are not at a crossroad. And I think I heard someone say this in the last week. We're not at a crossroad. We are at something far worse. And it's going to take all of us to make things better. Yes, I believe every Caymanian should have a job in their own country. Yes, I believe that. However, there's also the sad reality that there's a reason why with other countries, there's a lot of migration. There's a reason why when you go to Canada, you see lots of folks from Asia. There's a reason why when you go to the UK, for example, there is like a melting pot of people from different countries. The issues that we're facing in this country are not unique. And I need people to understand that there's a reason why people decide to leave their country for a better life in a different place. to start over, take on new skills, to learn something new. Yes, there should be jobs for people here, but, and I say this very carefully, but there is a sad reality that with how our population is continuing to grow, there is a sad reality that it may not be possible for everyone to find a job at the right level in their country. It's a sad reality, and I think it needs to be said, right? So when we're speaking to our kids and other young people, I think we have to be very honest with them and say, well, look, absolutely try to find a job here, but it could very well be that if you want more than that, like if you're an accountant or if you're a lawyer, there will always be work for you here. No debate for that. But there are also opportunities elsewhere where you can grow at a far more rapid rate than you would here. So it's a very delicate balance. We want our young people to come home, but I think we also need to be honest with them that they need to explore all their options. So from that perspective, it's something we do need to consider. I'm just very concerned for the future of our country. I think with everything going on globally, I feel that we're very exposed. Yes, we're doing as much as we can, but it is a reality that we need to face. Look at the landfill. We only have a few years left before that's at capacity. What do? Do we even have enough time to come up with a plan? Or will things just spring up on us and we have to just make some kind of sloppy last minute plan? This is no disrespect to anyone, but the fact is, some of these decisions that we're contemplating now, we should have contemplated it 15, 20 years ago. And again, it's not knocking anyone. I think the pace of change has been exponentially rapid over the last few years. And whereas we thought we had the next election cycle to do it, yes, we got a few years from now. Yes, we can't afford it in this cycle. Oh, we'll look at it in the next cycle. I think we need to not completely knock politicians for not accomplishing all they said that they would. Yes, some of it is poor project management and poor strategic planning, but some of it is just really due to the fact that the pace of change we're seeing now, we've never seen it before. It's caught us off guard, and it's going to continue to change at a rapid pace. That's the reality. We need to accept it. Prices of homes are not coming down. They're not coming down. Listen to me. They're not coming down. I don't care who tells you that they're coming down. They're not coming down. You want to know why? You bought your place 2 years ago. Prices dropped 15, 20%. You're now underwater on your mortgage. What happened in the US back in the 2000s, right? People were walking away from their mortgages. The housing market imploded. Do you really think that we would let that happen here? So hear me again, prices are not coming down. All that can be done is that we can look at, well, what rates are we charging to what group of people? How can we ensure that our first-time Caymanian buyers are able to buy something for themselves? But again, the only way that can be done is either A, reducing revenue coming in from stamp duty, or B, reducing it for one grouping and increasing it for another, so that there's a net zero impact on the budget. Either way, it has implications. If we just reduce it and we don't reallocate it, again, that means we're cutting a form of revenue which needs to support something that we need as a country. If we reallocate it, okay, certain groups may be happy, but certain other groups may start going, well, is it really beneficial to buy property here? I'm not here to talk about whether that's right or not. I'm not running for office, so that's not my debate. But please understand, if demand slows on that side, it impacts our economy. So these are things that all parties need to consider. And it's a tough job. Hats off to you all for taking a stand, running for elections, trying to be the change. But you all have a very, very difficult job. And at the rate that the population is growing and increasing, your job is going to be increasingly harder every single day. We're at 88,000 people right now. We're going to 100,000. It's going to happen. I thought that, okay, there's a pie in the sky. Not going to happen. The fact is, we're almost at 90,000. By the time the next election comes around, we are going to be at 100,000. What are we doing about infrastructure? What are we doing about traffic? What are we doing about folks who can't afford homes? What are we doing? These are decisions that we should have thought about in years gone by. But the fact is, at this point, there's nothing that we can do other than to say, we are here, living in the moment right now. What plan can we make today to give us some chance of hope in the future? I don't know how people are going to do it, but we need to work together as a country. It'll take all of us. All of us are needed to come up with the solution. So when April 30 comes and all is said and done and we form the government, regardless of who that is, we need to work together, we need to put our heads together, and we need to do what we can to take care of this country and to future-proof us. Because at the rate I see things going, I am not some kind of doomsday person, but with how I see things going, I am afraid for many groups of people. I'm afraid for people who are retiring right now because I don't know how you are going to survive. I'm afraid for my generation. I don't know what kind of Cayman is going to exist when we retire. That's not the only thing. I'm afraid for the next generation coming because I cannot tell you what kind of Cayman is going to exist at that point, and I don't know what to say to my children other than think global, think international, do not settle, pursue your dream, think about what you really want to do, but think global. I don't know what else to tell them at this point. I really don't. So I'm worried for this country. I'm praying for this country. I am hoping that God gives every person running for election the knowledge, the wisdom to make the right decisions. Because if we do not get the next 4 years right, we are going to be in a place that we cannot come back from. And I'm sorry that I've gotten that serious with my message, but I need everyone to really think about this and really reflect on what do we do and what does Cayman of the future look like. Thank you, and I hope that you found this insightful. If you have any questions, you can always send me an email, Joel, Joel, .a.burke, B-U-R-K-E, @gmail.com. I do not have the solutions, but I am willing to work with anyone to come up with solutions that can be presented. So thank you and have a good day.